Hello and welcome back to another episode of the For the Property Investor podcast. And we're here with funnily enough, the weekly news. And because Nick Bendel is here, so it must be the weekly news. Hello, Nick.
Hello, Owen. Yes, that is hilarious. I am here. It is the weekly news. We are together.
Yes. So, what's been happening in your week, Nick?
Well, I had a very enjoyable and, may I say, productive week. My business, Hunter and Scribe, it's a copywriting agency that writes content for property and finance clients. And last week, Owen, I was contacted by a prominent real estate group which needed help with 3 important award submissions. And I interviewed their team members earlier today, actually, and I will deliver the award submissions to them in 48 hours.
Wow, that's huge. Well done.
Thank you.
How are you so productive?
Well, if I give you all my secrets, there won't be any mystery left.
And you are the man of mystery, aren't you, Nick?
I am the international man of mystery.
Right. Okay. Well done. Well, I'm a bit more boring than that. Yeah, we've just been busy with onboarding new managements all over the place. We picked up one client this week who has brought 5 properties to us to manage. One is just north of Brisbane in Morayfield. One is south of Perth in Wannanup. And they've just recently done a purchase in Townsville, which is 3 units on 1 title. So that's a good little cash flow earner for them. And it's so yes, that was a good productive week for us. And that was one example of what made it productive.
Well, I like the fact that they came to you with 5 managements because, of course, Leafield, your business is in 5 states.
It is, but we were only covering 2 states there.
Well, I think you're spoiling the synchronicity there.
Oh, sorry. Yes. It's yes. Five properties, 5 states. But yes. But technically, I was trying to be correct.
And I guess the next time someone comes to you, a client comes to you with either 4 managements or 6 managements, you're going to say, sorry, there's no synchronicity there. Can't help you.
Yeah, no, I won't do that. There's always room for one more.
Okay, well, you're a much nicer person than I am.
Okay, all right. Well, we all know you like to have everything in order, and organised and proper. Some people have other words for that, but yeah, I think that's just rude. But Nick, maybe we should be getting into the news. What's in the news this week?
We've got 3 stories to chat about today, Owen, and the first one is rising inflation reduces chance of rate cuts. Annual inflation has increased in consecutive months from 1.9% in June to 2.8% in July and now 3% in August, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And the annual inflation rate might increase further in the months ahead because the monthly inflation rate in September last year was minus 0.2%, and the monthly rate in October last year was only 0.1%. And if the monthly figures for September and October of this year are higher than those very low figures from the year before, then the annual inflation rate will rise further. As a result of these inflation numbers, NAB said, quote, "The risks have shifted," and has updated its cash rate forecast. After previously forecasting that the RBA would cut the cash rate in November and February, NAB now believes the RBA will keep the cash rate on hold until May 2026. NAB said, and I quote, "The outcome of the August indicator suggests there is meaningfully more inflation pressure in the domestic economy than we and the RBA had expected." So, Owen, what is your take on these latest inflation figures?
Well, I think we were the first to pick it a couple of months ago, weren't we, Nick? When those first initial figures came out where it's just like looking at the 12 months past, and as those figures from 12 months ago drop off, and we've got much higher inflation figures in comparison, it's going to push up that annual rate fairly dramatically. And as long as everyone else doesn't get too over the top in a dramatic way about that, then we can plan for it and be understanding of that and go, it's okay. It means that the economy's not going as backwards as it was 12 months ago because we now have lower interest rates. So it seems like the RBA has got this soft landing thing happening right. Yes, it's not as bad as everyone might think it is.
Well, back in June, inflation was 1.9%. So that was just underneath the RBA's target range of 2 to 3%. Now for August, it is 3%. It's at the top of that target range. Based on that, do you think NAB was right to rule out another rate cut in 2025?
I think so. We all want rate cuts, but I think we're good for the rest of the year. Because we're coming into the spending months, being coming into Christmas. Did someone mention that word, Christmas? It's you probably know the days till Christmas, don't you, Nick?
Possibly. But I just want to say to
I'll
you,
give you a hot minute for you to do the calculation. But yes, coming into Christmas, yes, people start to spend more and so on. So the RBA will probably be cautious in terms of making another cut coming into Christmas time.
Okay, good point. I mean, given that we do want to keep a lid on inflation, I don't expect you to buy me anything too expensive for Christmas this year. No more than $1,000. We do need to keep a lid on inflation. But speaking of inflation, we've been talking about the RBA and inflation, and the implication in all of this is that we expect the RBA to solve the inflation problem, but should it be the federal government that solves the inflation problem?
Oh, well, what are you suggesting, Nick?
Should the government be governing?
Well, maybe the government should just be governing and not spending.
Okay,
Is
well,
that what
there's
you're alluding to?
possibly. I do have a way of slyly alluding to things.
Yes. And you're not wrong.
Well, am I ever?
Well, we could go on all day about that, but we don't have all day. But but certainly, yes, if the government was to reduce the amount of spending they're doing, because really they're the main spender that's keeping the economy in the positive at the moment. Yes, so if they were to cut back on their spending, maybe it wouldn't have such an inflationary effect, and we could have lower interest rates as a result. But there's always second and third level consequences to these things. So, yeah, we need to take those into account.
Well, it's well known that Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers are listeners of this podcast, so something for them to think about.
Yes, obviously, because Albo's got nothing else to do while he's sitting on a plane for 24 hours.
Let's move on to our next story. Property keeps paying off. The latest pain and gain report from Cotality found that 94.8% of sellers made a nominal profit in the June quarter. While this was down slightly from 95% in the March quarter, it was well above the 10-year average of 91.5%. Houses outperformed units. 97.2% of house resales delivered a profit compared to 89.8% of unit sales. Also, regional markets outperformed metro markets by 96.4% to 93.9%, continuing a trend that has now lasted more than 5 years. Owen, what do you make of the fact that the share of profit-making resales in the June quarter was markedly higher than the long-term average?
Well, when we look at a lot of markets around the country, and I assume because you haven't clarified that it is across the country,
It is.
in terms of capital and then capital cities versus regional areas. So if we look at uh, most markets across the
Mm.
country, they have been in positive territory. And if we go further back in the last number of years, we've had fairly positive territory in all markets. And even Melbourne's making some small steps ahead these days, which is good to see finally.
Mm.
They're managing to catch up with the rest of the country. Um, and then a lot of regional areas have had positive results in the last number of years as well. So it's nice to see that everyone's
Mhm.
making money from it, but it also shows that it's something to consider that there are still people losing money from property. It's not impossible. And I would make the assumption that most of those people are making a loss due to maybe not holding on to the property long enough.
Mm.
And it's unfortunately it is more about time in the market rather than timing the market um, with property and any long-term investment. I should add. So uh, we need to be, and when you're talking about property, if there is a loss, it's usually a fairly sizable loss. Um, and because a lot of people are borrowing at times of buying a
Mm.
property, and you lose 10% on $1 million property, then yeah, that's a big chunk of cash to lose. So hopefully, in a lot of cases, they're in a position where they're able to roll that into something else. But a lot of the time, people are forced into selling a property at a loss because of life circumstances, whether it's divorce or illness, and those types of circumstances where they might have lost their income and they can't afford to keep the property anymore. So yeah.
It's probably no
It's probably
surprise
no
that
surprise that
houses consistently outperform
consistently
units in the
outperform
Men and
units in
Jane
the Men and
report. We,
Jane
we see
report.
that
We
every
see that
quarter.
every quarter.
But are you surprised that the regions have outperformed the capital cities now for 5 consecutive years?
Oh, in some parts, yes, but regions in the last 5 years have had a lot of gain. It's and they're still quite popular because and the lack of supply in the regions are probably helping to push up those prices more. And a lot of people have realised that if they can work from a regional area, then why shouldn't they?
Mm.
I mean, the price point is so much better, and just the quality of life is so much better than living in the city. So it's but it does come down to whether you can get the income and keep the work by still living in that regional area.
Well, let's move on to our final story today. And I'm going to call on your property management expertise for this one. The final story
Okay.
is renters are hot about air conditioning. Domain's analysis of its own rental listings has found that tenants are placing a higher value on air conditioning than landlords. Domain found that air conditioning has been the most popular search term among renters in Sydney and Adelaide this year, the second most popular in Brisbane and Perth, and the fifth most popular in Melbourne. Yet Domain also found that only 35% of rental listings mentioned air conditioning. To quote Domain, renters are clearly signalling what they want and need, and as temperatures rise, air conditioning is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. So, Owen, in your experience, how seriously do tenants take air conditioning?
Oh, it's they take it very seriously. and we always recommend to all of our clients who are property owners that if they want to get a good quality tenant and if they want the property to be tenanted quickly, then air conditioning is a must. It's it's one of those things that it's not necessarily going to increase the amount of rent you receive. It can do slightly, but it's more about maybe getting top dollar in the range of what you would expect to rent for, but it's also getting it rented quicker. Um, and what I've always said is the biggest cost to a property investor is vacancy. So you want to be able to make sure that your property is rented as quickly as possible, and having air conditioning in there is a must to be able to do that.
So it sounds like then that if you encounter a property without air conditioning, you advise the landlords to invest in air conditioning because the cost of the installation, what would that be? A few $1,000s. But if you compare that to empty vacancy, that might equal what, 3 or 4 weeks of vacancy, depending on the property. And and if the property isn't vacant for those 3 or 4 weeks, then I guess you made your money back.
Yes, quite possibly, and it adds up over time. You know, if that happens once every 12 months, and you have to drop the price as a result to be able to get it rented, then you're losing out both ways. So, yes, it definitely pays for itself.
In many parts of the country's vacancy rates are very low, but I'm guessing in a market where vacancy rates are higher, not having air conditioning would make it very hard to compete.
Yes, it would. And occasionally we get to that point where we're competing with many properties. And if you don't have a dishwasher, if you don't have air conditioning, some of those little things that make your property the first choice amongst renters, then if you don't have them, it just makes it so much more difficult to get rented quickly.
And those 5 managements you took on recently in the 2 different states, did they all have air conditioning?
Oh, off the top of my head, I would have to check. But it's something that we do as part of our um, as our onboarding process to be able to check what's in the property, and sometimes that doesn't happen until a bit down the track. So you've caught me too early, Nick. Ask me in a month, and I should know.
Okay, well, I'm making note of that in my diary as we speak. And you mentioned air conditioning, dishwashers. What are some other things you look for in order to maximize the tenant appeal of a property?
Ooh, there can be a number of things. It's uh, outdoor covered entertaining areas. Can be important depending on the area and the type of property. Inside the property, yes, you've got your dishwasher, you've got your air conditioning, but it's where the air conditioning is as well. So if it's ducted throughout the whole property, then that's fantastic. But sometimes it's they'll just have a split system in the main living area, and then they might have a split system in the main bedroom, but not all bedrooms. So there's different levels of air conditioning that you can have. So that's important to understand as well. But apart from that, screens, fly screens. Yeah, a lot of people. It's and not just on the windows, but on the doors as well. Some people would think, well, that should be standard, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. But in some areas, it doesn't come standard, or with some properties, even newly built properties, they don't come standard. So that's something small to look at. Again, depending on the area, ceiling fans. In a lot of Queensland properties, it's an absolute must. Every room, every property has a ceiling fan. But if you go to Victoria, yes, they go, well, yeah, they don't need a ceiling fan. They would think that that's a bit strange. So there's lots of little differences between the different regions, different states as well, about what would be considered normal or a must or desirable. So yeah, and they're all the things that we take into account when looking at these properties, and that we're bringing on, and looking at what's uh, what would be good to be able to add to the property to make it a more desirable property for tenants.
Love it. Love those
Love
insights.
those
That's
insights. That's
why
why
I tell everyone
I
you're the
tell
best
everyone you're
property
the best
manager
property
around.
manager around.
Not only
Not only
understand how to maximize the rental value of your property, but you also understand the different conditions in different states. So thank you as always, Owen, for your insights. Really appreciate it.
No worries, Nick, and thanks again for bringing the news to us each and every week.